it up for DJ Blaze. Good job. Oh my gosh, really pumping energy into this. I was backstage like, guys, thank you so much for making it out in this cold. Yikes. Fully yikes. The earth is burning and freezing. I was thinking about it before. I was like, there's like some humorlessness here at Generator. Like, you know, it's like funny because the stakes are so high. So then when there's a joke, it's like a harder LOL. But also it's humorless. Why is it so cold? It's scary. I was walking and I was like, it was like, it's dangerous. That's global warming. What a fucking idiot Trump is. To say, I'm like, shut up. You're a fucking shitty bully. Like, such a bully. Such an ass. A dirty, stinky ass. This is global warming, what we're experiencing, the cold. It's so fucking scary. Find a coat drive. You know what I mean? If you got an extra coat to give away. God damn. So we had a good night last night. We had one of two events, and then tonight is two of two. We're focusing on the public advocate race in New York. The what? I know. I didn't know either until I started programming this generator, where we work with Indivisible. Have you guys heard of Indivisible? Indivisible's dope, and I was like hawking them last night because they are... they're wonderful, and they're a grassroots organization that like gives you the tools to be active. And you know, even if you can't, I sign up for the emails, and I'm not going to every fucking whatever protest and sign making or whatever. I use them in a specific way, but one way is that their emails are a different kind of news that I really appreciate, like grassroots news, and they explain how the insidious shit goes down instead of just the headline of what happened. I find it very helpful. So Indivisible, we got some guidance from them, and they were like, well, the public advocate race. Oh, and my husband too found out about it. And there are now officially, and he went to this like town hall, and I was like, tell me, whatever you tell me, I'll do. You know what I mean? You're programming this one. So yeah, there are 17 candidates, which is partially like, you know what I mean? B-U-H, but also, I'm like, great. I don't need 2 assholes. You know what I mean? I'd like 17 good people to choose from. That's kind of what the vibe is for this race. So before we start, can we throw up this picture of Kevin? I lost this awesome, one of my best friends, Kevin Barnett. Oh my God, so sad last week. And I partially am like, just want to dedicate everything to Kevin and Bird Luger, this like stupid joke he said forever. Everything I do, I'm like, am I gonna just dedicate everything to Kevin forever? But also like it does relate to me to Generator, where it's like, what is any of this for? You know what I mean? What are we doing? I've never experienced a loss like this, and it just, everything is like becomes sort of black and white, like health is the most important thing, you know, all that shit. And it's like, seriously, I really feel like that is connected to voting in this next election, in this public advocate race. You know, we should be doing our thing, doing our like specific hustles, living our lives, but then also like, what can we do to take care of as many people as possible? And I promise you, voting for public advocate on February 26th is one of those things. So love you, Kevin. Bird Luger forever. To Kevin. Woo! Thanks, Blaze. Oh, man. Wild. So Generator, what is Generator? Generator is like still forming, TBH. We started as an online community that encourages people, kind of like a platform for people to record 2-camera videos of themselves talking about how the government affects their everyday lives. And you know, DACA was always like such a clear example where it's like, I'm being deported, I've grown up here, yes. But also there's like, you know, I'm not an immigrant. I was born on Long Island, and DACA, the like DACA shit and the president using dreamers and immigrants as political leverage, that fucked me up. You know what I mean? I was like, Jesus, what is this world? You know, like you can record a video just about like, you know, anything that is just messing with you and giving you agita or anxiety and depression, because it's real, you know? But also, if something's specifically affecting you, that's a great video too. But then, so we were at this online community, and then I met the second guest that you'll meet tonight, this unbelievable, miraculous person who happens to be 19 years old, who's an activist that you'll meet. And it was such an incredible conversation I had on the train with this person, that I was like, you know what? I got to continue this conversation and share it, because this is incredible. And it just got me jamming and vibing, and the live series was born. And it's been great. It's been such a great way to galvanize, to like think of actual more action items rather than just like logging data, which I do think is still important. But it's also been a great way to give people some guidance and support in recording generator videos, because this is my best friend, Matt. Hey, Matt. Raise your hand. Hi. And Matt's really proud of live streaming. Yeah, live stream. He's like, I'm live streaming, so I'm the one live streaming, so. But Matt's like smart and attractive, and it should be easy for me. But seriously, it's like, you're so gregarious. You have all these friends, and I was like, record a video, and it was like, I'm scared. It's scary. It's hard. So we provide some support, some direction, some guidance here tonight. So I hope you will make a video. We need, stories, and just we need data for our side, I think. So yeah, and let me just say this one last thing, this like concept that it's like, I love bikini pics on Instagram. You know what I mean? I love your vacay, like butt shots. Love them. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm like, double tap, yes. But, and we're like still forming these like directives and these phrases and the principles of generator. Like, I'm just talking it out, but it's like, can one of 8 posts be calling your senator and like showing your community how you do it? Can one of 8 posts be like, yo, this DACA thing is so fucked up. They're using immigrant kids as leverage? What? Can one of 8 posts be reality? Can we change the course of representation versus reality? Because I think we can. Ooh, another like principle concept is like, Trump has hijacked Twitter. Twitter's a hellscape. I can't even like be there. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, yeah, like puke when I like sign on Twitter. It's seriously so like nauseating and like strobing. It is awful. Facebook has been taken over by like Russians or whatever. Instagram. Can we keep Instagram and make it the progressive tool? It is so progressive. You see like such different kinds of people and fluidity and races and ages and whatever. There's so much good shit on Instagram. Can we lock it down as the progressive communication tool? Because it's a very good one. Even if Facebook is like fucked, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not like, I love, you know what I mean? It's like, I know it's fucked and complicated, but it's there and it's a pretty good tool. Okay, these are my, this is my spiel. So, okay, yes. So the first guest tonight, we had him last night, and we're gonna just keep talking to him. He is a Mother Jones reporter. He wrote the book, Give Us the Ballot, and he's an expert. He's our generation's expert in voter suppression history and voter suppression laws. And he just continues to blow our minds. So I'm excited for all of us to learn from him. Give it up for Ari Berman. Yes. Hi, Ari.
Good to see you.
You too. I'm gonna like tuck your shirt in, your little jacket in.
Jewish mothering me?
Yes. Well, yeah. Here we go. You know what I didn't say last night was that you grew up hippy dippy.
Sort of.
Can you just give like a brief summary? Because I find it so amazing. Because I grew up in like Long Island suburbs, like cookie cutter, and I can't believe what you grew up in.
So I grew up, I like how you get right to it. I grew up in Fairfield, Iowa, which was a really interesting place.
Whee!
It was
No, I'm just kidding.
It was near Iowa City, but it was the home of the Transcendental Meditation movement. Like what the,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like what the Beatles did in the 60s. And so my parents were major hippies, and they eventually stopped doing drugs, and they
That's cool.
started meditating, and they made their way to Iowa to live among the farmers and the Iowans.
Did they drink?
Well, now they'll have like a glass of wine or two. But yeah, it was weird. It was like they were these big hippies, and then they like got really into meditation, and then it became like very strict. Like, don't drink, like don't eat meat, don't do any of these things. Like people think like, oh, you grew up in a commune, it was like free love. And I'm like, no, it was like New Age spirituality meets like Reagan America.
Yikes.
You know, like like people were wearing suits and like being very intense about like being a vegetarian before it was like cool to be a vegetarian.
They were wearing suits?
Yeah, because you know they were like, I mean, not like every day, but like they were trying to be, you know, entrepreneurial and grow the brand and stuff. Yeah.
You don't have to answer this. Do your parents smoke weed?
No. I mean, who knows? I mean, they're in the Caribbean right now. They might be.
I hope they are. Cool. I was just
but
curious.
as far as I know, not for a long time. I think they did enough to like cover a lifetime.
Got you.
Back in the day.
Wonder what that's like. We'll see if I ever reach that amount. Did you grow up meditating regularly?
Yeah, no, it was funny. So, because sometimes I run to people on the street, you know, and they'll be like, oh, I just came from yoga, or, you know, I just did a meditation session. But like, oh yeah, you know, I grew up meditating, and they're like, oh, you know, that's so cool. I'm like, no, you know what? It really wasn't. Like when you're forced to do something, it's just like something you're forced to do. And it's like, we were doing this, you know, in the 80s and 90s before it was like hip and cool. It was like, you know, I had to meditate in the morning. I just wanted to sleep. You know, I had to do yoga. I was really inflexible and bad at it. And it was like one of those things where like, I respect those things. Like I value those things. But like, and I still do a lot of them, but when you're kind of forced to do it, you have a slightly
It's kind of the same as
perspective
like church on Sunday or whatever. You have friends ever that, or I don't know if you did.
Well, my wife grew up, going to church on Sunday, and I think she was, you know, basically doing everything she could to get out of it.
I would always like sleep over a friend's house, and then on Sunday they had to go to church, and it was like, really? You know, like that sucks. And it did for them too.
Some people just don't have a choice. You know, sometimes you have to meditate. You have to go to church. And so that was life.
So hippy dippy, wee. Remember that? So that's how Ari grew up. And now he has become the premier writer on voter suppression laws and history. And we covered last night. What did we like cover last night? Like the gains in Florida, basically. And like how fucked Georgia is with voter suppression. Just, I guess, how would you summarize last night?
Well, I think
our discussion.
we start out talking about the fact that, you know, there are all these bad laws that have been on the books in all of these like really important states, like in Florida and in Wisconsin.
Oh
and
my
in
God,
North
that's
Carolina,
right.
all these places.
About Florida being the laws of Jim Crow South until November. Some of those
how
laws.
Florida had this law that prevented 1.4 million people with past felony convictions from voting. So Florida was only one of only 3 states that prevented people from voting. You know, even after you had, you know, served your time, paid your debt to society, you still couldn't vote, and that was a law that dated back all the way to the Jim Crow era. So we were talking about how in 2018, 8 states actually passed ballot initiatives that will make it easier to vote, harder to do things like gerrymandering. And that's a really huge deal because it was passing in these really important swing states like Florida and Michigan and Colorado, and also in these like red states, like in Utah, they voted to get rid of gerrymandering,
This
which
was what
huge.
was weird to me. Like, not weird, wonderful, but, you know, remember I was getting like I didn't trust those Koch brothers. You know what I mean? Like, it's this nonpartisan thing that across both parties, there was a 64% agreement to take these laws away and allow people who've been convicted of felonies in the past to have a second chance to vote. I couldn't believe that. Like, I don't trust it, I guess. I'm like, why did they? And you were saying, well, there's white Republicans too who've like got felonies in DC, basically high-powered like felons, you know. But I don't know. I just can't believe it that was a nonpartisan thing.
Well, I mean, it's hard to imagine. And I mean, what happened in Florida was to repeal this felon disenfranchisement law that prevented over 1 million people from voting. I mean, you had to get 60% of the vote. So you had to build a really big coalition. And there were a lot of Republicans locked up in Florida who also couldn't vote. A lot of people who had done their time and still couldn't vote. A lot of people who, quite frankly, supported Donald Trump, but they weren't able to vote. And the thing was, well, okay, how are they going to be able to vote too? I mean, it can't just be the ACLU arguing for them. They have to have a broader coalition. And there were these coalitions of people that were more on the libertarian end of the spectrum that had been making an argument about mass incarceration for a long time, that believed that the prison system was an example of basically failed big government. This is the kind of the libertarian critique on the right of mass incarceration. And they were able to find common ground. Like, I mean, the ACLU and the Koch brothers disagree on literally everything, but they were able to find common ground on like one issue. And like, I think we should totally be skeptical of like all of the other motives and all the possible ulterior motives, but like, it was the combination of the two of those things, the combination of having the ACLU on the left and the Koch brothers on the right, that got you to 64% of the vote in Florida. Otherwise, you're just not going to get there because it's a 50-50 state.
Right. You were talking about this idea of going around the politicians, that you go straight to the voters. What was that?
Well, one of the things that's cool is that 26 states allow ballot initiatives. I wish all 50 states allow ballot initiatives, but what we've seen is that there's been this incredible amount of gridlock, not just in DC, but in the states. And so many states have been under one-party control, under Republican control. I mean, Florida, Wisconsin, so many important states have been under one-party control. So if you want to do something, you can't pass it through the legislative process because that's not an option. So in the states that allow ballot initiatives, what people started doing was putting things on the ballot, like in Michigan, putting automatic voter registration. So like, you don't have to show up and go through the whole process of registering. Like, if they can confirm that you're 18 years old and a U.S. citizen and a resident of the state, you'll automatically be registered at the DMV or at social service agencies, places like that. Like, that's the wave of the future for registration. Like, that is super popular. Like, pretty much everyone wants that, except people who don't want people to vote. Right. And so when you put these ideas directly to the people, they're very popular. When you put these ideas to Republican politicians, who are the ones suppressing the vote so they stay in office, well, they're not going to support it. So the only way to do it is to try to bypass it, because you're probably not going to change their minds.
So ballot initiatives, like, I wish everything was a fucking ballot initiative. We don't even need parties, really. You know what I mean? Like, are ballot initiatives only state? Do they have city ballot initiatives? Are there ever federal ballot initiatives? No, because it's only 26 of 50 states that even allows that.
Yeah, it's cities have them, yeah, and states have them. Sometimes it's like, if you live in California, there's like 1 million ballot initiatives, and it's kind of insane.
Right,
like,
and they're like Prop 8, Prop 56,
you'll get your ballot,
whatever.
and like, you'll have to like really like sit down and study it, and I think that may be too much for some people.
I've like seen on Instagram, they're like, yes 8, no 7. Yes, you know what I mean? It's like...
And like, big interest can then manipulate the process, because they're often the ones who are like the most well organized. So sometimes ballot initiatives can be captured by like the same corporate interests that are doing all the other bad stuff. But on like other things, on voting, for example, so like on voting issues, on raising the minimum wage, on legalizing marijuana, on expanding Medicaid, there's been a ton of support for progressive ballot initiatives. And in like really red states, places like Missouri and places like Utah, that will not adopt like liberal policies through the legislature, they're really open to this stuff through the ballot initiatives.
Yeah, there were some ballot initiatives in November, I think 3 in the city. And David went to vote before me and like sent me like yes, no, or whatever. And then I saw like the answers, the cheat sheet, they were worded such that it was confusing and seemingly progressive, but not. And he was like so upset that he, had been tricked and like didn't, because then I saw it later on Instagram, someone being like, this means this means, it's made so obscure, even when there are ballot initiatives, which is like a fair tactic for voting. It's still corrupted, I guess.
Well, I mean, and some things are complicated. Like there were legitimate debates, I think, in New York about the various initiatives. Like, and so sometimes it's not super clear cut. Like, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? I think like with the voting language, like it was fairly clear. Like you would read it and you would say, there would be a summary that was written, so people could understand it. And, it would say things like, do you support, restoring voting rights to people with past felony convictions, or do you support, automatically registering people to vote, or do you support allowing people to register to vote on election day? And that was stuff that like people could understand, and there was like there was support for it.
This is like part of Generator is also just being like, I'm an idiot, like I don't know, and making other people feel less stupid. So I'm going to ask like a stupid question, but there are no stupid questions, but there are. And this isn't even necessarily one of them, but whatever. I'm like, libertarian. Is that a young white male who has a lot of money but has a gay friend. Is that what libertarian is?
Pretty much.
Wants to keep their money but has like a gay friend from high school they want to keep. Is that what that is?
Pretty much.
It sucks. It's fake and it sucks and it's Republican. It's like, you're not cooler than a Republican, bro. You are a Republican. A libertarian's a Republican, right? Pretty much. They're like, well, I'm fiscally conservative. It's like, yeah, I know you want to keep your money. Everyone loves money. But what about health care? Like, that's what a libertarian is, right? It's fake.
I think you don't need me to say, I think you know the
Good.
answer. Yeah.
Just like clarifying. Fuck them. You know what I mean? Okay, great. So a couple things you wanted to go over. Ari was the best, helping me cheat today, where I was like, how the fuck are we going to advance this conversation? And then before I even asked you, you texted me some good shit. So let's talk New York.
Yeah. So New York has had, for decades, some of the worst voting laws in the country.
And tell us, really rub it in how long. You know what I mean? We've had a Republican Senate for 75 years.
We've had a
correct?
Republican Senate. We have had Democratic governors who don't need to be named that have been terrible on this issue. They'll go talk about how great they are on being pro-choice or how great they are on guns, when it comes to, do you want people to vote? No, maybe not. And so it's been a problem in both parties. And so the stats I always cite is that 37 states had early voting. New York had no early voting. 27.
One second. 17 states had early voting.
37 states.
37 states.
Yeah.
See, I'm an idiot. And New York wasn't one of them.
We're
so progressive. You should come to our Pride Parade, but we don't have early voting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, it's like
37 to 52. I'm like, make it all 50. What is this state by state shit?
For sure.
Okay. See how I need to go
That's
slower.
a fundamental flaw of our Constitution. So, the whole notion of voting on a Tuesday in November is totally antiquated. We used to do that because that's when farmers brought their crops to the market in the 1800s. It's totally people had a lot of spare time back then. It took forever just to get to the market. And now people work, right? People have people literally never stop working anymore. People work, they have kids, they have demanding schedules. There's any number of reasons why you can't get to the polls on a Tuesday in November. So it just makes sense to have a lot more time to be able to vote. At the very least, 1 week, 2 weeks of extra time. So if you're out of town or you're busy or one reason or another, you can still vote and it not be an issue. So New York had no early voting. 27 states, so more than half the country, you didn't need a reason to get an absentee ballot. If you just weren't in town or you were sick or you weren't mobile, you could just get an absentee ballot. In New York, to get an absentee ballot, you had to swear under penalty of perjury why you needed one and go through this absurd process where you had to find your board of elections, you had to mail the form in, they had to mail the form back to you. You could navigate the system, but it was not user friendly.
Yeah, if you're a fucking genius, I'm I can't navigate this shit. It feels like when you are in high school and you're can I go to the bathroom? And it's why? And you're why? You know what I mean? It's so disrespectful. And I know that students are students and teachers are teachers, but it's also we're all people. I don't need to tell you why I have to pee or whatever. And also if a kid has to go cry or whatever, leave him be. That's so fucking rude. It's so fucking rude.
So, and then
disgusting.
15 states have things like automatic voter registration where you can just, like I was saying, you're automatically registered if they can confirm that you're eligible to vote. 15 states have election day registration where you can actually register on election day, which is great if you didn't get it together to register or you had a problem with your registration. We're seeing this all across the country. We see this in New York City all the time. People show up at the polls, they're told you're not registered to vote. Well, you're pretty much screwed if you don't have election day registration. This happened to the mayor's son in the last election. He showed up and was told, you're not registered to vote. And he's like, I'm the son of the mayor. And then de Blasio had a press conference and it was seething because
But I'm also you're the mayor.
Yeah.
Do something.
Well, true, but he doesn't control.
What was his press conference? Oh, he doesn't.
He doesn't control New York elections. The state legislature controls them, and the governor appoints people to the state board of elections. And so basically, the mayor was just complaining but couldn't really do anything about it. So anyway, there was all of these problems. There were people showing up and not being on the voter rolls. In the last election in New York, voting machines broke. There was, remember they said there was a two-page ballot.
Yeah.
You had to rip your ballot, which was super confusing. the scanners are like 100 years old. So you
Right.
put a piece of paper in, it just broke. They started breaking. So like the voting machines were broken. There was like super long lines. In the primary in New York City, in New York State between Bernie Sanders and Hillary in 2016, 120,000 people were just removed from the voting rolls in Brooklyn. Like nobody knew why. They just were removed.
I'm like, I think I know why.
Yeah. So anyway, all of that is like the backstory to New York. But for the first time, they passed a law. We now have early voting in New York for the first time,
okay,
which is great.
Give us let's really take it in. That's dope. Early voting.
We are now the 38th state.
When is it happening? When is it happening?
What's that mean?
Oh yeah, what does that mean?
What does it mean? It means that you're gonna have, I think, like.
I'm like, early voting. What is that, huh? Yeah, but what is that?
It basically means that
Thank you.
election offices and polling places will be open 10 days before the election, including
right,
2
and you
weekend
go down
days.
to the office. I did that once. It was like on Hudson or something.
Well, or you should be able,
right here,
theoretically, you should be able to go to your polling place. Like, there's not going to be quite as many, but you should be able to go to your same polling place, or at least a close polling place, and be able to vote early.
Oh, I think mine's like a different county. It was like in Hudson, I did early voting. Okay, that's confusing. So your polling place is supposed to be open 10 days before the vote.
Yeah, 10 days before the vote. So that's the first thing they did. The second thing they did was pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-olds. So when you turn 18, you are automatically registered to vote, which is great. Because, I mean, then you don't have to, like, convince people, like, you should register. Like, they're already registered. So that's one thing they did. Another thing they did
Wait,
is...
I need to... Hold on. Pre-registration for 16, 17-year-olds. But if it's automatic when you're 18, why do they need to pre-register?
Because we don't have automatic registration.
Oh, because we don't?
No.
Oh, God. Cool.
That might be next.
Another, like, appointment for a kid to make. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's good. 16-year-old making, like, an appointment. Okay, cool.
So one less appointment.
So one less appointment would be good, but at least they can do it now.
They passed portable registration.
That is cool. Wait, 1 second. Just like this is like, that is cool to make that a cool ass campaign where it's like, you're fucking 16. You can pre-register to vote. Yeah! Cool, man. Sex and drugs and voting, bro. Cool. Okay, just making mental notes.
They might bring you in the high schools. Who knows?
Great.
You could be the pre-registration ambassador.
Love it. Great. I'm down. Okay.
So
see how
they
I need
did
this
that.
time
Those
to,
two
like,
things.
process? Okay,
they
go
did
on.
portable registration, meaning like when you move from one county to another, which a lot of people do, like you move from Manhattan to Brooklyn, which like everyone does now. Like I tell people I live in the East Village, and they're like, where?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's automatic now too. You don't have to like re-register, which is a huge pain.
But how do they like? Is that only if you're registering your new address at the DMV?
I think they have ways of like checking to know.
Oh.
But I'll have to figure out how that works later. Okay, so other things they did. There was this crazy loophole in New York called the LLC loophole, where basically if you created what was called...
Already sounds evil. Like Mr. Burns evil.
Yeah.
Cool.
If you created what was called a limited liability corporation, which essentially was like a shell company for real estate interest, you could give unlimited amounts of money to politicians in the state outside of regular campaign finance laws. So this was like every big developer who wants to build like the next shitty apartment on the High Line would give like a unlimited amount of money to a lot of politicians in both parties.
Right.
And they closed that loophole.
Cool.
And you can still give $5,000, which is not great, but you can't give $1 million anymore.
Right.
So,
is this the 8-to-1 thing?
No, that's okay. That's another thing that they might do.
So let me just like take this in like idiot speed. They closed the loophole so that the real estate developers, their max is $5,000 to any politician.
Yeah, through this.
That's wild.
System. Yeah.
So that is campaign finance reform, right?
Yeah, it's a version of it. Yeah, it's one version. They're also considering doing what you were talking about, which is basically public financing, like we have in New York City for mayor and for public advocate, which is if you raise like $100 in small donations, they'll match it 8-to-1, so they give you $800. So that's awesome because it basically. And
I don't understand who gives this $800.
Like basically, it's like it's city money.
But
like,
city money, is that coming from the real estate developers?
Well, theoretically, if they're paying taxes, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's coming from a fund that's like allocated like any other thing they're spending money on. There's like a fund that's devoted to like public financing. But basically, like right now you have no incentive. Why would someone get $100 donation if they could just get like $1 million check? Like that's how members of Congress think. Like, why should I raise small money if I can raise big money? Well, this actually incentivizes you to raise small money because you'll get something out of it.
And then you can say small money, small money.
And and everyone's everyone loves that now. Like people love like not taking corporate money. It's like a cool thing now. So
cool to me.
So that's another thing they did that's in effect now. The match is something that I feel like we're getting really, really wonky here. But that's
I don't need to.
And then the last thing they did, which is going to take more time, is they essentially started passing constitutional amendments for both election day registration, so being able to register on election day like we were talking about, and to have no excuse absentee ballot. So anyone can get an absentee ballot if they want one. And that has to be done through, you have to basically do 2 sessions of the legislature, and then it has to be approved by voters. So
and is that city council legislator?
That's New York. We're talking about New York State. This is all New York State.
And that's the New York State Senate then?
This is the New York legislature. So the Senate and the House. Oh. So like the House was...
And that's the 2 legislator things.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the problem, is that the House was Democratic, the Senate was Republican, the governor was somewhere in between. And basically, they had to, like, the governor was saying, it's the Senate's fault, it's the Senate's fault, it's the Senate's fault. Well, guess what? Not the Senate's fault anymore. Right. So the governor signed it all and kind of has now made this a big issue. For some reason, when he signed the bills, Ben Stiller was there. I didn't totally understand why.
Ben Stiller, the actor, the
He's
comic
like,
actor.
And now I want to introduce Ben Stiller.
That is so weird.
And everyone was like, what is Ben doing there?
That's so weird.
Yeah, but Ben Stiller was there, great champion of democracy.
Yeah, Zoolander, baby. Yeah.
There is one issue that I want to mention, though.
Please.
So the governor signed a bill for early voting, but he didn't actually give any money to implement early voting.
Cool.
He is...
he's cool, huh? Governor Cuomo?
He's saying, and I'd like to hear that maybe some of the public advocates have a thought on this too, but the governor said, well, the counties are saving a lot of money. Oh, there's one other thing they did, sorry. They consolidated state and federal primaries. Again, this is wonky, but basically, if you voted for like a city race, like the mayor, but you voted for Congress or governor, which is Congress or Senate, which is a federal race, House or Senate, something like that. Those were on different days,
right?
Which was super confusing for people.
Like, can I get 2 days
off?
And
kept turnout low,
right.
Because how many people are going to vote in 2 different elections? New York was the only state that had separate primaries, which was done for no other reason than to keep voter turnout low. So now we have one primary for all that stuff, which is good. The governor said, well, we're going to save all this money from only having one primary. You can just use that money for early voting. Well, maybe the counties will, maybe they won't. But we need like actual money. Like, here is your fund, just like we have a fund for public financing, here is your fund for early voting. So Common Cause New York, which is an awesome organization that has led the fight on this for decades, they're holding a press conference tomorrow to get the governor to allocate funds for early voting. So if people want something to do, they can call the governor.
That's so
and
weird.
tell him to fund early voting.
I don't know, maybe you could use that money for early voting. Yeah. I'll see ya. It's like, you're the person. And also, doesn't he like take checks from the real estate lobby? I'm like, just use one of those checks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he wants to. I think he supports the policy, so I don't know why he's not funding it.
But if you support the policy, like, the only way to really support it is to make it happen. Well, if you're the person who makes it happen. That
is indeed what people are telling him.
That's good. Common Cause. Where is that happening? How can we like view it if we can't physically make it?
I imagine just they're on Twitter. Common Cause New York, I guess. There's this great group called Let NY Vote on Twitter. That's where I get all my New York election news.
Dope.
I don't know if they're on Instagram or not, but
Let NY Vote on Twitter.
But they're on Twitter.
And are they the handle for Common Cause?
They're like the umbrella coalition of all these different groups. Like
and Common Cause is executing this press conference.
The Brennan Center for Justice and all of these people are in this coalition.
So let me ask you, like, why? Why is all this voter reform happening? Part of me is like, the Democratic Senate wasn't in place yet, so it's not them. Part of me is like, Cynthia Nixon pushed Cuomo to be more liberal the way Bernie pushed Hillary to be more liberal. You know what I mean? It's like up your game or whatever. Is it because the people are speaking up more? Like, why did this happen all of a sudden that New York is like, I fucking love it so much, but it like is like so evil, and like we are like, this is like just like ghosts, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's fucked up how this city is so industrious and stays so industrious. Why would they do that now?
So I was in North Carolina covering a voting rights trial in North Carolina, where North Carolina passed like a bunch of really bad laws that made it harder to vote. And one of the things they did was cut back on early voting, because North Carolina had early voting, but when a lot of African Americans used it in 2008 to elect Barack Obama, they of course then tried to get rid of it. And so I was at this voting rights trial in North Carolina, and I'm listening to this Southern lawyer representing the state who had a very bad record on civil rights. Trump actually nominated him to be a federal judge. His record was that bad. And his name was Tom Farr. And I'm sitting in this courtroom, and I'm listening to this lawyer for North Carolina, and he gets up and says, I'm not going to imitate him, but he said, why does North Carolina need to have 2 weeks of early voting? New York State doesn't have any early voting. And my eyes almost popped up, because I'm like, how dare this Southerner, lecture the North on our voting laws when you had Jim Crow and all this stuff. But then I'm like, thinking about it, I'm like, he's right. We don't have early voting. We have no, you can make an argument against voter suppression in North Carolina, but you couldn't make a defense of New York's voting system.
That's for fucking
sure.
And
New York was sick of every time a Republican passed a shitty law, then pointing to New York and saying, well, what about this blue state? And so there were a lot of internal reasons why people wanted to be able to make it easier to vote.
And blue just based on our Congress?
Blue based on how we vote
and
for president.
Federal. But our Senate has been Republican for 75 years.
Yeah.
Do you guys know the IDC, the Independent Democrats Conference? We covered it or whatever and helped expose them. These 8 Democrat Congress people.
Yeah.
Who sold their vote to Republicans, and they were like, no, I'm a Democrat. Just kidding. Thank you. Just for cars, you know what I mean? For nothing, just personal wealth. It's just idiotic. It's I always think this. It's why wouldn't you just be in real estate? Why wouldn't you just be in advertising? Go make money. Go you know what I mean? Blog, bitch. You know what I mean? Why do you have to pretend to be a politician or an activist?
I think at one point, both the leader of the House, who was a Democrat, and the leader of the Senate, who was a Republican, were both in jail at the same time.
Wow.
I think we're the only state that had both leaders of the legislature either in jail or indicted at the same time.
We are wild.
So we had the worst voting laws in the country, but the most corrupt politicians, which I think is not a coincidence if you think about it.
So that's interesting.
So I think the voting rights has become a bigger issue. As we've seen all these voter suppression laws playing out around the country, that has made states reflect on what are our own laws. And we don't have some of the same restrictions. We don't have strict voter ID laws where you have to show a driver's license or other stuff at the polls like Texas does or like Alabama does. But we haven't been proactive about expanding voting rights either.
Right.
I think people want to get there, and they want to see more competitive elections. They want to see higher turnout, and they feel like there's a link between those things, what's happened to our democracy and what's happening to our politics writ large. And it's a lot easier for real estate interests, other interests to control our state if turnout is low and politicians, no matter which party they're in, feel like I'm never going to lose an election.
Right. I hate to say it, but another thing we say with Generator is that we're popping a pimple in this country. Trump is a disgusting, gnarly, cystic ass. He's just the head of the pimple. You know what I mean? He thinks he invented all this oppression. It's no, he's just the perfect Danny DeVito as Penguin villain, icon. He is just the head of the pimple, and we are popping a pimple. And thank you to him, because I don't think that we wouldn't be sitting here if that was if he weren't in office. And he's from New York. It's mortifying. It's we better clean up our act. We have a fucking Democratic Senate 2 years after he was elected, and I think it's definitely connected. But it's still vague to me that what you're saying about they're sick of it. Who's sick of it? I guess it is just noise being made about this shit from the people.
I think the voters, broadly speaking, were sick of it. I think if you looked at how we were voting in presidential elections, the fact that we were voting for Democratic candidates by 20 points in presidential elections, but our state politics was mired in partisan gridlock and in entrenched corruption in both parties, people were really unhappy about that. And I think now we finally have a legislature that reflects where our state is at politically, and a governor who is moving towards reflecting where our state is at politically. And so I think like one of the other things is that like there were structural issues, like, you know, the parties in power control the drawing of the districts in terms of redistricting. Right. And like Republicans were very sophisticated in redistricting their own areas to make it harder.
Oh, yeah.
to make it harder to get them out of office. And so
gross.
Like all of those things combined, and like there were these things that like nobody thought about, like the IDC, like the fact that there were these Democrats who were voting for Republicans. I couldn't
believe it when I found it out. This video narrated by Edie Falco. I couldn't believe what Edie Falco was telling me. It was unbelievable. And also, it wasn't white guys. It was a Jew. It was a Latino woman. It was a black guy. I was like, I couldn't believe that there were these 8 people selling their vote.
So I think like what you were saying about Trump is it made everyone kind of look inward and say like, how in one way or another did we contribute to this? Right? Like what are we doing in our own, if we didn't directly contribute to Trump, what are our Trump-like aspects in our own state and our own politics? And like there was a lot to look at in New York that was pretty disgusting in terms of how our politics had run, and just what a cesspool it had been in both parties, where politicians had been there forever. And it was like, you know, Tammany Hall 100 years ago, still going on today. Like the people that are appointed to the Board of Elections, it's like straight out of the Boss Tweed era, you know, where like so you put some crony on there who's totally unqualified, has no experience, and now suddenly they're running elections in the biggest city in the country. And so like that kind of stuff is still happening in our state. And I think like it took like Trump to get people to look like not just at the president, but also look at what's happening like in local races. That's one of the things that I thought was really awesome in 2018. Yes. I think that was really good that you did this too before the election. Like focus on local stuff, because like we can complain about like Trump all we want, but it's very difficult for one person to get the president out of office. It's a lot easier to change who your city council member is, who your state legislator is, who your secretary of state is, who your public advocate is. That's a lot easier when you have one vote.
It's so much more rewarding too. You know, like your vote, it feels like more direct. People, does my vote matter? Does my vote matter? Yes, in every election, but also like it is so much more direct and like proportionally so much more important in local elections. It's really exciting. And I don't like watch sports, so I like had time to fill with some sort of competitive something. So here we are. You're a fucking genius and you're so sweet. Thanks so much, Ari Berman. Give it up
Thank you.
For this genius. Okay, dope / yikes. You know what I mean? Okay, cool. So I wanted to tell you guys that the public advocate candidates who are coming here tonight are rushing from Queens. They just did another forum. These people are working their asses off. We're going to give them just a little more time to chill. I hope they've all gotten here and can like settle. But what is Vic? Vic is a glimmer of hope. Vic is an angel. So I met Vic on the train. What is it? It's January, June. I maybe met Vic like, I had just gotten back from LA. So like April 2018. And Vic was like, are you in Broad City or whatever? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, what's up with you? You know what I mean? Like, you already know. I like always tell people, I'm like, give me a story. You know what I mean? Because you already know my shit. Like, when did you lose your virginity? You know what I mean? I'm just like, I gotta write. You know what I mean? You're taking my time. I'm not getting life experience. I need your life force to write about. So I'm like, what's your deal? Vic's like, well, I'm like, I'm just like speaking at like the Brooklyn Museum. I was like, sorry, what? You're speaking at the Brooklyn Museum? How old are you? 19. Vic has been an activist, social justice activist as well, and like has morphed into more expertly an environmental activist and social justice through environmentalism. Warrior, bless you, God bless. Since they were like 13 or something. I mean, it's crazy. We'll get like the lowdown, but they've been speaking and protesting and organizing for maybe a third of their young lives, but has recently and most notably been since 2015 in this lawsuit against the Trump administration, against the federal government, which is now the Trump administration, suing for endangering the youth ignoring science and endangering the youth. Because Vic's argument and the Children's Trust, we'll get the details, but their argument is, I'm 19. I was going to say Vic is 19. Vic's like, I'm 19. I've contributed way less to global warming than you have, Trump. You know what I mean? And it's a damn good argument. And Vic also went to this Poland environmental conference like a month ago. So brave. I can't believe it. So we'll recap that and learn a little more. Give a warm welcome and a heroic open your heart for this incredible person, Vic Barrett. Woo! Okay, hi Vic.
Hello.
No, I'm not going anywhere. How was your day today?
Good. Just a lot of moving around. Our head lawyer came to visit us today.
Right. Can you like give me some of the details that I was fucking up? Like what's the Children's Trust?
Our Children's Trust.
Our Children's Trust is
yes.
a group, an activist group. Specifically, their medium of activism is lawsuits.
Yeah, so they're a nonprofit organization that's existed since 2009, I believe, and their goal is to put up environmental legislation or environmental lawsuits and use the courts and the judicial system to try to get environmental policy into play, specifically with young people.
And when did you start? I said 13. Was it 16 or 13?
That I started...
just the activism in general.
Freshman year of high school, so I was 14. Actually.
Gotcha. I'm a little late. I ain't gonna be right. No, I'm just kidding. Why'd you wait so long? You know what I mean? And then the other thing I wanted to ask, just the name of the Poland conference again. It was like it's long. It's a long name.
Oh yeah, the UNFCCC COP24.
UNFCCC COP24. This is not the like Paris agreements thing, or is it?
Well, it is. So every year for 24 years. 24 years.
Which is longer than you've been alive.
Yeah. The UN has been coming together and doing these negotiations. So the Paris Agreement was COP21. Got
you. Oh, yeah. I see. Mm-hmm. And who were you there with? What was the group?
Sustain Us. So Sustain Us is a nonprofit organization of young people from the United States who send delegations every year since COP21 to have some youth constituency in the building and, really bring civil society's voice to the table. And they do other delegations now too, like we're exploring delegations to the World Bank and to the UN Climate Summit that's going to be happening right here in New York actually in September. It's supposed to be one of the largest climate summits of the time. So. And
just to like illustrate for everybody, I was like going on and on about it. I'll keep it more succinct tonight, but part of what you did were demonstrations, like the whole conference was designed like a coal mine, right? A coal plant.
Yeah.
It was like specifically evil and like monster horror, like Get Out, but for climate change. You know what I mean? Like It was like so scary. The U.S.'s like little like booth or whatever was empty. Like nobody. Mm-hmm. It was horrible. And when the U.S. Whatever, like the dudes from the Matrix like sat down and were like talking about. Coal or whatever, how wonderful coal is. Mm-hmm. You and other youths from Sustain Us stood up and went, ha, ha, ha! And they were like, what? And they were so confused and they were like laughing and they were like, this is a mockery. This is a joke. It's not funny, but you're making a joke of like people's safety, the planet's safety.
Yeah, exactly.
So like badass shit like that.
Yeah, and that was really hard to get together for sure because, you're on the ground. We're just learning about the meetings and the panels as they happened, but when we found out the United States was just sending one panel and that it was about the future of fossil fuels and their sustainability, we were like, well, that's not gonna fly. Yeah. So we really planned like the whole night before, actually stayed up all night planning this action in the UN space to disrupt this panel and just get actual people who deserved the mic up there.
Amazing. Yeah, give it up. Incredible. So we were talking last night about like what this lawsuit entails, and a lot of it is like minutia, talking to like scary old dudes, one at a time, talking to judges, pleading with them to let you save the planet. It's been going on for 3 years. It sounds mundane as fuck. This one sounds like action, you know what I mean, like the Poland thing, but COP24. But the real work that you're doing for the lawsuit sounds hard and tedious. So we were texting today. You sent me a group of cool kids next to like the Broad City poster or whatever, and it was like panned off. That was good direction work. Who were those? Seriously, I was like, yes. Started on our faces. I was like, okay, I'll watch this. But who were those kids?
So those were some of the plaintiffs. So we have 21 plaintiffs from all over the United States, from Hawaii, Oregon, Alaska, Louisiana. And this week we're all in New York together, doing some press, talking to people, doing a photo shoot. I don't think I'm allowed to say it with you, but it'll be cool, hopefully.
It will be cool.
But yeah, so we're all here together, and that's why I was saying our lawyer was coming to hang out with us. And a lot of them have never been to New York, so I took them to Washington Square Park today. And we saw your Broad City poster, and one of them was like, hey, isn't that Ilana? Like, isn't that who you're always talking about?
Cool.
And I was like, yeah.
Oh, we're friends. Me and Vic Barrett. That is so cool. And you were telling us last night that, like, the plaintiffs range from 11 to 22?
Yeah. So
11, LOL. An 11-year-old talking to a judge saying what? What does this 11-year-old say? I couldn't fucking believe this last night because I'm like, what does this say? What does this motherfucker say? No. Like, illustrate this.
It's really crazy, actually, because it shows how much comes from experience. Because he's 11 years old, but he's been homeschooled his whole life. He lives on Satellite Beach, Florida, and in an area that's really susceptible to climate change. And just his whole life, he's enjoyed the outdoors. He's enjoyed surfing, swimming, like being a young kid in Florida, but has seen the actual changes that come with climate change on his everyday life. And that's how he's able to talk about it, that's the experience it comes from. And even if, he's not necessarily breaking it down in the political or, social political way or economical way, he's talking about just his life and what he's seen happened. So
what was like the most ridiculous thing that you like said to a judge pleading for the planet's wellness, and what did they say back?
Well, it's actually interesting. It's not usually the judges who do a lot of the talking during these hearings, but the Department of Justice lawyers always have very interesting things to say. I
mean, even during like Obama's era, to be honest, like I'm being like naive, but like even then, was it just as stupid?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely more evasive, just wanting to talk on climate change during the Obama era.
They're like, this is interesting.
Yeah, because they couldn't say like, oh, we don't believe in climate, we don't care about climate, because this is the Obama administration. They did a lot. They introduced the Clean Power Plan. They did what they could have for environmental policy. And the interesting thing was actually when the Trump administration did come into power, there's a certain aspect of our argument that became more succinct because the administration had made it very clear that they don't believe in climate change and that they had no intention of stopping fossil fuel infrastructure or stopping any of the actions we were pointing to as evidence in our case.
So what's like a DOJ tidbit so we can like really
DOJ tidbit, let me think.
You know what I mean? Just like you said this thing yesterday that I was like, what does it look like? And it looks idiotic. It looks fully idiotic. It's like, how can you sit here and lie to a kid? But like, even what was that example?
I mean, I remember moments being in court and they like to get very flippant about like our media strategies and about us all being kids, and they said something like, these kids are are saying that they're in the trial of the century, and I was like, what's the relevancy of that to this argument? Just really making it a point to be like, make it seem as if we're
doing it for fame.
Yeah, doing it for fame or fun.
I love depositions. I'd much rather be doing a deposition than drinking for the first time. It's like, I don't want to be fucking doing this. You know what I mean? Like, it's an honor and you're the vessel for this incredible journey, but it's also like, can I chill? Can I fucking chill?
Yeah. And just a lot of questions, like, right in front of these people's faces, like, are young kids' faces, like Levi, who are saying, like, how can they prove, they can't prove that the United States has done any direct damage to them. A lot of just things that once we actually can go to trial and show them all the evidence that we've laid out and that exists, and that, anyone who knows about climate change and how the government works knows is there, they can look at that.
That's what it was, this judge being like, but how can you prove that it's affected you?
Yeah.
It's just like, this is semantics. This is just bullshit.
We were talking about how, like, the way that they ask us questions in depositions sometimes really comes down to, like, can you calculate the amount of carbon that the United States had to offset in order for that storm to impact your life? Absolutely not.
But it's also like BRB. I'll get you the info. You know what I mean? Because you guys have people working.
Yeah, and that info exists.
But then it isn't allowed to be a real conversation.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it's like you're just like you're like getting to the next level of a video game. You're not like actually having this conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So fucking annoying. Well, you know, like I just wanted to talk tonight. Like, how do you see shit going? You know, like I'm 31, and I've like noticed in the past few years, like my perception of time is changing. Like shit felt both slower and faster, I guess. You know, like it's different. It's like I can just wrap my head around certain things that I couldn't in a certain way before, and I know that'll continue in different ways. You know, but I'm like, how do you see this going? How do you see your work going into? What do you think is going to happen with this trial? Where do you see shit going?
Yeah, I think that, you know, in a way where I see the lawsuit going and what I see the lawsuit as is connected to just how I see like broader movements of resistance happening around the United States. Is just, you know, even at the end of the day, if the policy, legislative, judicial aspect of our lawsuit didn't come to fruition, it's still 21 young people standing up and saying, we want to hold our government accountable, and we're going to hold our government accountable, and showing other young people that you have the full autonomy, ability to do that. You have things that you can access in your own community, and you don't necessarily have to be suing the U.S. federal government, or because that's not a really easy thing to do, but just doing the things in your own community and realizing that it's not about the politics or who we're trying to appease to. It's about you and your culture and your existence and what you love and what you care about. And I think that we're seeing that building in a lot of movements around the country. We see people getting together and really saying, like, this is what's happening with politics, but let's get people together to let them know that we're watching them and we're seeing, and if they're not going to take the action, we will. And I think that it's about it's more people power than political power at the end
Let
of
us
the
take
day.
you in for a moment. Let us just take you in for a moment. You're a phenomenal soul. That's right. Because, like, you know, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, are you optimistic? Because I kind of am. One clap in the end. Nice, man. I got you, bitch. You know, it's like, I'm thinking, like, as I was asking this, I'm like, what am I really asking? Like, are you optimistic, or are you this or that? But it's like, what you're describing is like, there's an energy. And if we put that energy into putting it back into the people, it reverberates, it exists, it happened. You know, like, even if the policy doesn't come out of this, like, you guys have a lot of, like, history written down that the government has to take down because they're in this lawsuit, because you're forcing them to be talking about it. Basically, we're like recording the level of, you're making them record the level at which they are lying at this point.
Yeah.
And, you know, it matters. It fucking matters. And it's like laying the groundwork for, you know, it's frustrating, and you have like a whole, unfortunately, lifetime ahead of you of like work to do, but it's, you know, it's just laying the groundwork, and it is about like energy. Just that energy is being thrust in that direction, and it's true about these grassroots movements, about just knowing that people care about their fellow citizens. You know, is important.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny to hear you give me all this encouragement, and whenever you talk about like, oh, you're such a genius, fix things like that. Like, I know like 2 of my friends from high school are watching this right now, and they're probably like, this kid, like, I used to lose my backpack during the school day. Like,
oh my
I
God,
still
that
do.
is
Like,
so funny. Thank God you said that. That's honestly, that makes me so happy, because I did a show the other night, and David went into the bathroom after me, and then he comes out with my phone. I was like, ooh, I left my phone in the bathroom.
yeah, I
like,
do things like that.
just putting it, it's like gross. Also, like, you don't need that in the bathroom. Oh, that's nice to hear.
Also, I just wanted to quickly plug. So, like I said, all the plaintiffs are in New York, and tomorrow we're doing an event at the New York Society for Ethical Culture by Central Park at 6:30. And we're going to be doing an event with 350.org, the Sunrise Movement, and me and my lawyer, representative from 350 and the Sunrise Movement, are all going to be doing a roundtable talking about some of these issues, talking about politics, talking about what the case means, and how other people could get involved. And all the plaintiffs will be there for a meet and greet. You can meet Levi. He's a very active kid.
Awesome.
Yeah, so 6:30
Did
tomorrow.
you post it on your Instagram?
That'd probably be smart.
You should do it, and then I'll repost it, and then I'll repost it, and then you can see it if you want to show up. I bet it is going to be like heart-stoppingly riveting. You are amazing, Vic. You never disappoint. Give it up for Vic Barrett. that does like turn things around where you're like, okay, yep, yeah, Vic's out there, it's worth saving the planet, doing what we can. It really is. Let me just grab this in case somebody wants water. Okay, so we are about to get to it. So let me tell you what happened last night. So this is not like a debate. Of course, people like can debate and like conflicts may arise, fine. But it's like I just want to like illustrate what this role is, because I do know. Last night I feel like I kind of learned pretty well like what it was, but only because I'm like doing generator. Do I understand it? We had 3 candidates last night, and Raphael Espinal and Namiki Konst and Dawn Smalls, and yeah, it was good. It was like we heard people's platforms. It was kind of clear that it's about a couple main things, this race. Do you guys know what public advocate is? Okay, so public advocate is this non-partisan role. There are only 4, I learned this all fucking last night. There's 4 city positions, comptroller, public advocate, governor, mayor. And public advocate is the only one, or attorney general, I don't know. Public advocate is the only one that is non-partisan. They check up on people. They check on the city council. They nag. They just check in. They push it along. They don't have a vote. They don't do legislation and voting, which kind of frees them because they don't have to like sell their vote either. They can just push people to do the right thing. It's nonpartisan, but it seems to be that all the platforms that people are running on are progressive and activist based. And I read in this article, they make $186,000 a year, which I'm like, good. I want you to be comfortable to do the job well. Oh gosh, if the mayor dies, public advocate becomes mayor. So it is like fucking important. Some people are like, I don't know if we need this public advocate thing, but that's often city council people who don't want to be checked on their corruption. So I actually think, just based on like a little bit of research and then meeting these people, it's why not have another person fighting for the people and checking on corruption? It's a pretty well done system, but it's just been corrupted and fucked so hard. But if it's done right, it can be incredible. And I think the public advocate position, a lot of people are seeing this as a opportunity to do something really good. And I think if the person who wins does what a lot of them are promising to do, it could be great. So, okay, tonight we have 4 candidates. There are 17 officially on the ballot. Wow. We had 3 of them last night, and the 4 tonight are, I'm going to bring them up right now, but first I'll name them. Michael Blake, Melissa Mark-Viverito, Ben Yee, and who am I forgetting? Oh, Jumaane Williams. So give it up for these 4, and you'll meet them better now. Give them up. Blaze, keeping it moving. Nice. Hi, y'all. How are ya? Good. You guys can like debate or whatever, but also I just want to like sort of also just like talk it out, because it seems like a lot of people are like still figuring out what is going on. And yeah, feel free to adjust. I'm adjusting constantly in this experience. Yeah, it's better in the stand. I tried already once. So you guys, would you like sort of go down the row? Say your name, say your deal, how you got here running for this position.
What up? My name is Michael Blake, born and raised in the Bronx, New York. And, before this, worked for President Obama 6.5 years, been in the state assembly now for the last 4+ years. We've been able to do things that actually help people. We help work on raise the age so that 16 and 17 will not try us out any longer. What we're doing on minority women-owned businesses get paid faster. The reason why I'm running, we just want to help people. At the end of the day, this is why we do this. Plain and simple. Trains and buses should run on time. Plain and simple. You should not have lead in your blood. You should have heat and hot water.
That's right.
It's real simple on jobs and justice. So that's why we're here.
Great.
but I need a hat because I'm bald. So I'm just saying, you got to help me out right now. So you got to give me
My hair is worse than your bald head. Your bald head looks great.
Oh,
My hair is needs this
good.
hat more than
We on
you
message,
do right
okay.
now, I promise. You look great. Dope. Jumaane.
First of all, thank you for doing this.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
doing something that the schools refuse to do. Start teaching civics to people. So I just
Right.
want to say thank you so much.
Thanks.
And
Thank God to my public school system in Long Island that I learned nothing. So that's good.
My name is Jumaane Williams, councilman in the 45th District. I'm actually a tenant organizer, community organizer by training. That's what I did for a living before becoming a council member. I always say it was before the President Barack Obama, so nobody had any idea what that was. My mother asked me to please get a real job, and I would go to places and say I'm a tenant organizer. They thought I was saying tennis, like no one had any clue what this was.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'll take some tennis lessons. Yeah.
So for me, it was always about empowerment. Then I became a council member. I'm a public school baby from preschool to master's, City University of New York.
Wow,
I have Tourette's syndrome, ADHD. You may see me shake a little bit, all right, but I'm as cool as a fan. Everything's okay.
Dope.
I do get offered a lot of water. And I always wanted to make sure that I used the voice that I was able to find through theater, drama. When I'm on stage, I don't tick. Like when I'm acting, it's an amazing thing. The voice I
Wow.
found through that and organizing to empower people. And I come to this as being, I didn't get elected to get reelected. I didn't get
Right.
elected to become public advocate. I got elected to do a job, try to create transformational change. And the seat that I hold is not more important than the people I represent. And I've tried to live my life as a council member that way, and I'm proud of the results so far.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Melissa.
Thank you for the invitation. Buenas noches.
Buenas.
Melissa Mark-Viverito, born and raised in Puerto Rico. I came to New York City at the age of 18. Raised in an activist environment where my mother was a feminist and a leader in the feminist movement in Puerto Rico. So I tell people that my moral compass is about creating, right? How do we make our city and the space that we're living in more just and more equitable? And having been elected to office to represent my district of El Barrio in the South Bronx, and having been elected unanimously by my colleagues to serve as the Speaker of the City Council, was about how do we, through the power that we have and the influence that we have, be able to create more equity and justice, right? We pass legislation as council members. We negotiate the budget for the City of New York. We're talking about what are the initiatives and priorities that we have. So when we talk about closing Rikers Island, which I do support and I took the lead on that. When we talk about not arresting and giving people a criminal record for being in a park after dark or for public urination, as unpleasant as that might be, I don't think people should get a criminal record for that. How do we create more equity and justice for the undocumented immigrants that live in our city? Right? And creating and allowing for them opportunities and making sure that we do live up to our values as a sanctuary city, which I believe there's a lot more work to do, but we've done a lot of work to protect. That's what this is about for me. It is about the passion that I have for justice and for equity and for ensuring that everyone has a space, right, to be here, to feel welcomed, to be validated, and that their contributions be honored. So I'm really excited about this race, excited about the reception, and look forward to engaging more in conversation.
Dope.
Thank
you very much, Melissa.
Hey everybody, sorry about that.
And there's water, Ben, also,
Great.
if you need.
I
To
love
your
water.
left, I think.
I love water.
Water is delicious.
Water helps. Clean water.
Hey everybody, I'm Ben Yee. I am not an elected official or a career politician. I actually come to this race with a background in civic technology and education. And the reason I'm in this is essentially because for the last decade, I've been involved in just grassroots organizing. The campaign that I'm running is completely done by a grassroots network of New Yorkers. There's no big money in it. There's no special interest in it. I'm not really much of a known quantity except for the fact that I'm running a campaign that puts me on a stage with folks who are elected officials. And I'm
Or formerly elected.
formerly elected officials, so I'd say I'm doing a pretty good job here. And for the last 2 years in particular, I've been teaching civics all around the city. So for 10 years, I've been involved in politics, particularly in opening up hidden civic institutions like the county committee. Just by show of hands, does anybody know what the county committee is? Okay, great. So you should all come to one of the civics workshops I do and get involved and run for county committee because there's a lot of open seats, and these are very powerful and important institutions in our society. But I've been engaging people in county committee and community boards and all of these things for 10 years. And the last 2 years, I've been teaching workshops about it because for some reason, interest spiked. Who knows what it could be? But that being said, I I've trained over 4,000 people, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them have run for county committee, joined a community board, joined their NYCHA tenant association, gotten engaged. And having seen that, I know now that when you provide people with the information and knowledge of how the system works, and you provide them with the resources to break down the barriers between politics and government and bureaucracy and the people, you can really change things for communities. So I'm running in this race really on a platform of 3 concrete programs to bring this knowledge to the residents of New York, to break down the barriers, to make engagement easy, and to turn the Public Advocate's Office into something which is a platform for all of the thousands of advocates that are out there in the city, either advocating already or looking for a way to make their voices heard.
Dope. Great job. So I just want to say again, everybody's going to get the chance to answer or whatever. And if you're like, wait, one more thing, it's great. You know what I mean? We want to hear it.
Don't tell us that.
No, yeah.
It's not going to end.
So the 2 main things I want to hit on, which it seems like Public Advocate, what is New York if not trains and housing? And a lot of it last night was just tell us what it looks like. You know what I mean? I'm what does this look like? Making noise about stuff, checking on people, whatever. How do you guys see your time in office, your first month or 2 in office, going after the housing, the real estate industry, and how they affect campaigns, and I don't know, how do you see yourself going after it?
Well, when we talk about housing, there's so many different aspects of housing in the city of New York, right? We have what I consider to be the cornerstone of affordable housing, which is our public housing stock. And tomorrow, it was just tweeted out by the regional director / party planner at HUD under this administration that Secretary Carson is coming to New York City to give a big announcement.
Oh, boy.
Now, we've been hearing that there is the possibility of the federal government overtaking NYCHA. And so that big announcement tomorrow may potentially be that is a reality. That, to me, scares me. And it should scare all of us. When we have this administration that's been so hostile to communities of color, low-income communities. You also have Section 8 housing. You also have rent-regulated units. You also have Section 8-based housing. All of that affordable housing. We need more aggressive enforcement in the city of New York to ensure that landlords that are doing wrong by tenants and forcing people out, right, are being held accountable. We saw an article that came out recently where it's highlighted that HPD is giving slaps on the wrist to landlords when they are doing illegal stuff against tenants. More aggressive, deeper levels of affordability, investing more. There's so much.
But what does it look like? What does it look like to go after that?
I've been doing this work for 20 years. It started as an organizer. So something that's deep to me. And you're right. The city would not be the city. We're New York City for 2 reasons: the transit system, and we learned how to build up to provide housing. Without any of those things, we wouldn't be this city. Now, when we talk about housing, is it the owners, the homeowners who are losing their house to foreclosure? City has stolen people's deeds by accident. Is it rent regulation that's up in June, or 421A that has changed so that people are now getting more tax breaks and giving less affordability? Or is it NYCHA, where we have 2 men who are playing a male measuring contest with 400,000 lives? And I have to call them out. The governor is one. The mayor is another.
Yep.
Both of them, by the way, worked for HUD. The governor, Cuomo, was the HUD secretary. He hired another man by the name of Bill de Blasio. And so these issues have been here for a very long time.
Yes.
But
is it mandatory inclusionary housing, which I was one of 3 members to vote against? I say that because most people have probably never heard of mandatory inclusionary housing, but you've heard of the rezonings in this city,
right,
that are based on that flawed platform. And so I've been fighting for a very long time. And as public advocate, I want to take what I've had the courage to do as a council member and bring that forth in the public advocate's office to help everyone in this city with these issues.
Ultimately, though, the question here is, what can the public advocate do about it? And as you mentioned before, the public advocate isn't the executive. They're not the mayor. They don't set the budget. They don't tell the departments what to do. The public advocate isn't the city council. They don't make legislation by themselves. They don't even have a vote in the city council. They can introduce legislation, but they have no vote in the body, and they have no vote in the very important subcommittees of the city council. So the public advocate is almost like the vice president of New York. And you got to ask yourself, what does the vice president do? Now, it's a unique situation here because unlike the vice president of the United States, which runs on a ticket with the president, and therefore is meant to do what the president wants, the public advocate here is independently elected, and they're meant to be an independent voice. But agitating and being loud, I don't think, is enough. We've had 20 years of people being loud and agitating. The public advocate was created in 1989, and it didn't solve our problems because here we are today. Which is why, from my perspective, as public advocate, I've got 3 ideas, 3 frameworks for how to engage the public in city decision making. So what to do about the housing crisis, I'd say 2 things. First, we have to understand that the housing stock here is composed of 2 different aspects. You've got public housing, and then you've got affordable housing, and then like the market housing that everybody else lives in. And so NYCHA is one huge thing, and they are $25 billion or $30 billion in capital arrears. Now, what can you do about that? And that's a separate question from what you do about the overall housing stock of New York. Either way, from my perspective, the solution to these issues has to do with more democracy. So the Power for Communities program that I'm proposing, which you can read more about on my website, benjaminyee.com, is one which would engage residents in organizing their areas and their communities, bringing stakeholders together to do proactive, bottom-up city planning and providing them resources from the public advocate's office. Again, the public advocate doesn't have a lot of power, but it has resources like money and staff that can be used to provide access for the residents of communities, to help them develop plans, and then to bring those community stakeholders together across these imaginary lines that we call districts, community board districts, assembly districts, city council districts, to break across those lines and build a coalition of people who can then use the plan that they've come up with to build leverage against the mayor and city hall, because no mayor wants to upset every single community at once. Like, that's a lot of people to piss off. Yeah. And certainly no city council member or politician who's looking to move up that food chain. People on this stage are running for a citywide office. Most city councilors sit around waiting for the day that their term limited out to then move up to the next thing, Congress, which is more people, or a citywide office, which again is more people. They can't afford to upset everybody. So the programs that I'm proposing are ones which actually build political power and political leverage for constituents, for communities, and for New Yorkers in city decision making. And that is really what we need, because the city has no plan. We have zoning, but we don't have planning, and they're not the same thing.
Got you. Michael.
Who's sick and tired of the trains and buses being late? Right? Let's make this real clear. Who believes that housing is not affordable in New York City? Okay. To your question about the MTA and also around housing. On the MTA, when it comes to public transportation, what you saw this past week where a woman lost her life, unfortunately, because we don't have accessibility into many of our train stations, where only 25% of train stations have elevators and most of them don't even work. It doesn't make sense. Before I came here tonight, I testified at the Human Rights Commission because of the consistent discrepancy when it comes to workplace discrimination and, quite frankly, how we're not representing women in the way we need to. Why is this relevant to your question? Because I do believe the public advocate should be on the MTA board, so you have a voice on the MTA board to actually fight for the people. When you have folks on the MTA right now who are saying they're showing up at MTA meetings late because they don't know how the buses work, that doesn't make any damn sense. It doesn't make any sense at all when they're talking about raising fares when it's not working right now. It doesn't make sense when they're not implementing fair fares. And so at the end of the day, we have to make sure that the trains and buses and also the ferry work for those that are coming out from Staten Island. That's how we help move the needle. On housing, I'm the only candidate in the race that testified on September 26th when it came to how do we step up and helping our communities. Why? Because the mayor and the city lied about what happened with lead. They knew what happened with those kids and they lied about the data. September 26th, we testified on this. And I think it's important for us to ask ourselves, when you had the ability to help when it came to housing, what were you able to do in that? So this is not just on public housing, where there obviously has to be much more repairs. This is also around rent stabilization. So my former chief of staff, Aaron Carr, is the one that's running Housing Rights Initiative, which is suing across the city to demand rent stabilization. They sued and they just beat Jared Kushner to prove this. We should take away tax credits. Woo, I like that. Takes away tax credits, J51 tax credits from landlords if they're not implementing rent stabilization. Why should they make money on us if they're not making that happen? We should make it easier for you to have an opportunity to get a home and keep a home. You think about deed theft, think about mortgage theft. Too many times the city is coming in and taking properties and taking what's going on. So when we think about both of these strategies, you have to ask yourself, why is it that everything that has the word public with the city right now is not working? public transportation,
Right.
public housing, public hospitals. This does not make sense. Public schools. And so all these pieces are intertwined. Last on this piece, if you make less than $55,000, the train delays are adding an hour to your time. Why does that matter? Because that means you're getting home later. That means you're not getting to your work on time. That means you're getting families on time. And this is why it matters who's in the seat for public advocate, to make sure we represent you, fight for you, and step up for you. That's what we're talking about for trains. That's what we're talking about for housing. And to Ben's point, respectfully, I disagree on this. At the end of the day, public advocate does have power. Public advocates represent you to be there for the people. When you talk about vice presidents, Vice President Biden said something very clearly. A budget shows someone's values. And the budget that we fight on needs to make sure we help on your transportation, on your housing, and help represent you for the people.
Can
I
actually
believe the
clarify
public advocate
what
does have power.
the-
That's why I'm running for public advocate, and that's why I have the programs that I'm proposing. What I'm saying is, just saying I'm going to fight, or just saying that I'm going to be loud, is not sufficient.
Well, I
That
didn't
is
say
not
that. I
what's
gave-
taken
I
us.
gave-
I
I
hear
gave
you,
particular
and I
solutions
agree
on that.
that, of course, that the public advocate should have a seat on the MTA board, but it doesn't. I agree that the public advocate should have subpoena power, but it doesn't. What are the ideas that somebody brings to the race to take us from where we are today to where basically all New Yorkers agree we want to
Great
go?
question. I want to
This
jump
is
in
about-
almost in the
this
space too.
is
So
about-
I want to be clear on what the public advocate is, because a lot of people don't know, right? So it was created in 1989. It's been around since around the 1800s in some form or fashion. It was concretized in 1989. People may remember or know the name Mark Green. He's the first public advocate. We're proud to have his endorsement. They said at that time they wanted the office to rise above politics. They wanted people to make decisions based on what's best for the people, not themselves. They gave it 5 powers, which we keep seeming to gloss over, which are important. One is you can introduce legislation to the city council. Yes. As someone who's passed 54 pieces of legislation, more than any sitting council member, it is important to understand how to do that. The
I beg
second
to differ
is
on that,
as
but that's okay, Jumaane.
any sitting council member.
Okay.
You can't beg to differ with that one.
Okay.
As an ombudsman, you are a watchdog over the city council and the mayor, and a go-between between the city and the people. The third one, which is critically important, I think needs to get more play, is a charter cop. So the public advocate actually is the person who has to make sure that the agencies are doing their charter mandated duties. The last two are also equally important. You provide appointments to committees and commissions like the City Planning Commission when we're doing these horrible rezonings based on mandatory inclusionary housing that was a failed policy to begin with. And the last is you have a vote on the pension board to decide where we invest everyone's money here or not invest. That combined with the bully pulpit is a very powerful position. And we can't, the question is, can it be more powerful? Yes, we should have subpoena power. We should have an independent budget. We should sit on the MTA board. But just right now, there's a tremendous amount of power that can be used to shine light on things that people are doing in darkness.
I have a quick question. Michael, you just said getting a seat on the MTA board. Is that a thing that you can do as PA?
Absolutely. Right now, the governor conveyed yet again this past week that they should completely transform and blow up the board. Between him and the mayor, their dislike for each other is the reason why all this mess is happening. It was amazing to watch that the L train, all of a sudden the governor was able to find a plan that didn't work before. It doesn't really make much sense. And at the end of the day, this is why we got to change the game. The people that are in these positions are not helping us. We're watching this. The utter dislike of 2 men are the reasons why a lot of these policies are not happening. Now, I hear this. Jumaane just mentioned something which is very important. Oversight on agencies. Yes, absolutely critical. What was happening before we got into this mess?
Right.
And that's why we got to have a change, and that's why you got to have these positions. That's why I think it's important to be in the seat.
People
But I think
want, there's been this conversation about whether or not to abolish this position and the people that are dismissive of this position. But what we've just seen through this incredible historic moment in this midterm election, right, is that people want government to be accountable and transparent. People want their lives to be changed. People want government to work for them and respond in a positive way. So this position is an independent watchdog. It is about getting city government and city services to be responsive to the needs of New Yorkers. It's a direct relationship between the council and between the public advocate and those it seeks to represent, right? This is not the position of an individual. This position has to be shaped by those it represents, right? And that's the people. So engaging in conversations, there are those issues that we're all passionate about, housing. I'm very passionate about public housing, about the MTA. I've been talking about it in this campaign. But it is also about what are the needs throughout the diverse communities in the city of New York, and how do you want this office to best represent you? How do we bring you into the conversation so that we can solve the problems and the the challenges each and every day. And it is about building a more equitable city. We are supposedly a progressive city, right? But we're falling behind on many different things. And the state has a lot of catching up to do. We've had, unfortunately, a governor that has been complicit in keeping the Republicans in power. And we have seen a lot of laws that we had wanted to see over the years been stalled, like getting more stronger rent regulation laws in the city of New York. Hopefully we will see that. About ensuring that we have voting right laws or voting changes, right, to do early voting and to empower communities and encourage more citizen engagement. So it is time. Government needs to be more responsive, and we need to increase the role of the public advocate. Yes, it's powerful. There's a lot that we can do, but I think that similar to the comptroller being a fiscal watchdog over city agencies and contracting, the public advocate needs to be strictly, right, an administrative watchdog over city agencies, against the mayor, making sure that the promises made are being kept to New Yorkers, shedding light on injustices, shedding light on disparities, and figuring out ways to rectify that. That's what this role is about, and we need strong people that have experience and understanding of how government works to make it work better for you.
How many Trump fans
answer
in the
your
House?
initial question, though,
I just
the
wanna know how
public
many Trump
advocate
fans.
doesn't actually have the power to add itself to the MTA board. And even if they did try to change the way that authorities were run in this state, the public advocate wouldn't have a vote on that decision. So, I go around, the workshops that I teach are really about civics and government and how the process and the mechanisms of decision-making happen. And ultimately, we can talk about the boards on which the public advocate sits, which it's not a powerless position, but most of those boards are dominated by appointments from the mayor or have other people voting on them that can outweigh the public advocate.
And your thing is more like your civics thing is more like getting the people to make the...
You need the people to be engaged because everything we're talking about comes from the democratic institutions. The public advocate is mainly supposed to be the voice of the people, but most public advocates focus that on themselves.
Right.
We need less public advocate and more public advocacy.
So
Right.
the
Yeah,
reason
go
I want to
ahead.
ask is how many Trump fans in the House? How
Everybody-
many people
everybody hates
very
Trump.
much dislike Trump?
Hate him.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and I ask that because all of the issues that we're talking about came before Trump.
Right.
That means Democrats who were in control
That's right.
also failed us. We have a tendency to focus on just the orange man in the White House and the people who support him. And we have to be clear that Democrats came before us. And so when I was elected, I was always told I was too much of an activist. I had to choose between being an activist and elected official. I said, no, the best elected officials
That's
are
right.
activists. And so you see me getting arrested on the streets, but then coming back to pass laws to get the things I was getting arrested about. I say that because we are in a better place now, I think, in the state because of the blue wave. I hope everybody vote on that blue wave, particularly in the state. We got a blue Senate. I decided to run for lieutenant governor. Everybody thought I was crazy. I ran against the most powerful politician in this state, one of the most powerful in this country. I ran against the governor. $37 million. Every one of the 62 counties was against us. Most people wouldn't even touch me. I did that because as an activist, and maybe it's to Brooklyn me, I'm a hip hop head, hip hop raised me, maybe that's what it is. I reek of Brooklyn wherever I go. The activist in me said, we have to push back on the Democrats as well who have allowed these things to happen. So even with that, I'm so proud. We got 47% of the vote across the state.
Wow.
We won New York City. We got more votes than any non-white candidate ever in the state primary. I say that because I tell folks how I want to do.
That's amazing.
Thank you. The public advocate's office. I am more proud to have lost the lieutenant governor's race the way I did than to have won it any other way.
That's
which
right.
is the way most elected officials play this game.
That's
and
right.
that's the type of energy we need in the public advocate's office.
Is everybody here registered to vote? Raise your hands.
Yep.
Okay, it's a good number of people. And there's still some that are not? If you're not, it's fine. If you're not, you can raise your hand. Okay, there's probably some that have not. But okay, important. Obviously, just wanted to ask that question.
And also,
Blue
I
Wave
just
is
want to
the
say,
product of voters and people who got engaged because they realized something was wrong with the democracy. It's bigger than any one of us up here. It's bigger than any election that any one of us are running or have run. The point of the Blue Wave is that the people are the genesis of all of the legitimacy and power in our system. And to have a real public advocate is to have a part of the government which is dedicated to engaging them and empowering them. It's not about that person running for public advocate. It really can't be. The public advocate isn't the most powerful position in New York City. Arguably, the mayor is.
I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't really make sense because
but I'm
then
just saying, like,
why are you running?
Yeah,
you just need a space there.
So I think
No, you don't need a space. You need the resources and you need the dedicated commitment of elected officials to take this message and this idea and implement it as part of the government.
I agree, but there has to be
Exactly.
someone to do that.
So I
People
think,
want government to be
the
responsive.
thing that's good, I appreciate how much Ben agrees with our vision for the campaign, since our party name is For the People. So thank you for continuing to drive that home right now. So let's be clear at the end of the day. You know, there's been a lot of things we've been talking through and focusing on. At the end of the day, we are here because we're supposed to represent you. Plain and simple. And what's going on with the mayor and the governor and a lot of the city agencies is not helping. The position was in part created for some of the reasons I've been mentioned, yes. It was also in part created to make sure you had a person of color that had a chance to be representative citywide. That was part of the reason why it was created. But also, we need to be able to find more ways to listen to you. Now, we talk about the wave and what's been happening. The wave showed what's possible when we get out the way and actually create new strategies to get folks in the game. That's the reason why you have a black mayor in Atlanta. That's the reason why you have the first and second Latinas that were elected in Virginia. That's the reason why we have a wave that happened in New York. That's the reason why you got a Sikh mayor in New Jersey. Like, these are the reasons why we should be excited and be in the game. But we also have to be clear. Things have to change. We don't have the luxury to keep hoping for things to happen down the line. At the end of the day, you have to have heat and hot water now.
Right.
People got to have a job now. People got to know you're going to be consistent, progressive now. That means we have to be out there all the time. That means, men, you could say you're a man and a feminist at the same time. Right? It's that representation and being engaged in the process, but we can't ignore the piece. And so I hear some of the points that are being made, but this position does matter to represent you. That's why it was created.
And
it was created to hold
I
the
know
check.
that you think it matters. Obviously, you're
Obviously, I'm running for it. I have
You're
concrete
running for it.
proposals for how to use it.
But
I'm
It
just
says
thinking-
his vision is just very different than what we see the position as.
or
and that's-
your strategy, I guess,
Right.
is more from
I mean,
teaching
look,
the people.
I
than-
agree with what Ben.
Okay.
I believe in participatory governance in the sense that we need to engage those that we represent. That is why a group of us started participatory budgeting in the city council. We now have expanded it where any sort of discretionary allocations, any money that is available, your taxpayer dollars, you should have the ability to have a say in how those monies are going to be distributed, right? Any sort of major decision making that is happening in the city of New York, we should be encouraging engagement, more participation. And obviously we have systems and structures in place that try to tamper it down, that try to minimize our engagement, right? And try to silence us. That is why we've had such a hard time in reforming our voting laws, because the less participation benefits the special interest and the interest at hand. So we need to really break that open and encourage it.
And it was about incumbency protection.
I will say one thing, because I think it is important also in terms of one of the reasons I decided to run, because I had no intention of running for public advocate. I believe in representative government. I believe government needs to represent the people that it represents.
Right.
And so we need to see ourselves reflected in government.
That's
We
right.
can't be what we cannot see. And so it is important that we have, in this city, where 52% are women, where between women and people of color, 80%, right, are women or people of color, that we have 3 white men leading the city of New York right now.
That's right.
We have one citywide position where now, thankfully, my friend who I supported, Tish James, is now our Attorney General, has vacated this position. We have no women in citywide office.
Right.
And we've seen a drop in the number of women in the city council. Where I came in 2006, there were 18 women out of 51. We are now at 11 women out of 51. And that to me is problematic. And that is one of the reasons that I decided to run, because I believe in representative government. And I believe the voices of those that reside in this city need to be reflected in government and helping shape policy, because our perspective and our experiences and our life experiences are very unique and very different. And we are not a progressive city if that reality is not represented
That's right.
in government either. And that's the way I see it. That's one of the reasons that I decided to run. And my track record of success and accomplishment makes me best suited to be the next public advocate. And I hope everyone here definitely votes on February 26th.
So let me jump in here. Yeah, give it up. February 26th, I'm going to be posting the shit out of that. Let me just do one thing. So, like, I like to, illustrate things, I guess, whatever, as a comedian. I like the little moments, you know what I mean? To be able to, like, grasp it. Just this thing I want to parse out, and then we're going to wrap up. But everybody got y'all's vibes, so it was a success. I'm telling you right now. So, Michael, you were just saying, like, getting on the MTA board, and Ben, you said there was no vote. But
Which is just not accurate what he just said, but it's okay.
That you do get a vote?
No, you don't.
No. You actually rephrased what was said. The question was said earlier of how do you get onto the MTA board? Can you get on the board? The governor can appoint.
Oh,
I didn't say I
right.
appoint
Theoretically,
myself.
anything's right. So I'm not saying it's impossible for the public advocate to sit on the MTA board, but the governor makes the appointments. I thought you were referring to whether or not we could change the system so that the public advocate has a permanent seat on the MTA board or an appointment as the mayor and governor do. That is theoretically possible, but extremely, extremely unlikely.
But that
Under
wasn't
this
what you're
governor.
talking about. You're talking
That's
about
not what I
just
said.
getting
So
on.
I
I'm
appreciate-
just
totally
saying,
fine.
yeah.
Yet again, Ben agreed with my idea, but let's keep going.
Well, go ahead, Jumaane.
No, this is the first debate where I can say the word fuck, so I
Yeah.
just wanted to say that.
Dope. Fuck, 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 fuck,
Wow,
fuck, fuck,
wow.
fuck. Yes, fuck, yes.
A way to get attention.
Humanity.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
Jumaane, turn it up. Turn
you
it
know,
up.
I'm just picturing, like a public advocate sitting on the board. Like, to me, this job, lately I've been like really embracing, as a Jewish woman, nagging. That's how I get everything done, and that's how I've had success
You
in
gotta
my
be
life.
my Caribbean mother.
She and I could chop it up. That's honestly how I see my success personally, is nagging. Did you do this? Did you do that? You gotta do this, gotta do that. Even nagging yourself. That's what I feel the public advocate is, a nagging position. Like, I mean, is that right? Are you guys...
I mean, that has, yes, and I mean, you're a watchdog.
I'm like,
right?
I want you to
You're
like nag the
it's-
shit out of these people.
It's shedding light on issues, and I mean, look, investigation, research. What are the discrepancies? What are the disparities? Are certain communities being disproportionately impacted? By whatever policy it may be. We were seeing that with marijuana arrests. We were seeing that with like I was saying, criminalization of these low-level nonviolent offenses. So it is about shedding light, about saying yes, shaking the system. There's an injustice. We got to fix it, and we are New York City, and we can do better.
I'll
right?
take all
So
of it.
that
I'll take
definitely is.
agitator. I'll take troublemaker. I'll take nagger. Make sure you put an A in there.
Yeah. I almost said the word, then I was like, I'm gonna hold back.
Those are all
Yeah.
awesome words from people who I celebrated. My heroes when I was younger were
Yes.
X-Men, Spider-Man, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. They were all kind of all together. And so many of those people were called troublemakers. There was one thing I
Mine
wanted to
was the
mention.
Hulk.
But there was there was one thing I
like
wanted
the
to say
Hulk.
is important
Please.
about identity politics, and it's critically important, and everything the speaker said is important. It's important to see yourself in leadership, gender, race, sexual orientation, gender identity. Gender particularly is important in 2019. I always just say it can't be the only thing, right? So
Right.
I always call identity the gravy of
And
the
I
meal.
didn't say that. I said
It's
I'm the most
critical.
qualified candidate, also
Gotcha.
a woman.
Got it. So I just want to finish my thought.
MMV. Yeah, please.
Finish my thought. So I think it's the gravy on
Yeah.
the meal. And so there also is not that many black leadership. And I never ask folks to vote for me just because I'm a black man.
Right.
And I always say I don't want to lose those votes for people watching, so I will take them. But I want people to vote for me because of the vision I've laid out and what the public advocate's office can do, what I've done as a council member and as a tenant organizer. And then on top of that, I happen to be black. I happen to be a first-generation American. My parents came from the Caribbean. As I mentioned, I have Tourette's syndrome, ADHD, made it through the public school system from preschool to masters. And my mother raised two knucklehead children by herself right here in Brooklyn.
Wow.
I think those things
And
are
I
important.
mean,
So-
and I
did a
have an
good
issue,
job.
and
She
I
did a
have
damn good
let me
job.
just say one thing about this.
And
I
because
really,
because that was closing-esque, y'all get each closing-esque moment. So make it count.
No, that I say,
Make it count, my friend.
look, government our role is to make government more effective and efficient and just, without a doubt. My track record speaks for itself. mmv.nyc, feel free to look it up. But at the same time, I do take issue, because that is a conversation, and that's the argument that we've heard, right, when it comes to people of color in general, of our experiences in terms of being reflected in government, right? People say, it shouldn't just be about that, because it should be about the issues. No, it should matter. It does matter to me as a woman that I don't see myself reflected in government in 2019 in this so-called progressive city. And I challenge those that call themselves progressives, if they can't see that that's a problem. If they can't see that my voice as a Latina shouldn't be at the decision-making table, that the voice as a Puerto Rican, as a colonized woman and person shouldn't be at the decision-making table, because those experiences nobody else has. I have those experiences, right? And that is important when you're talking about shaping policy in this city. That is the biggest city where all eyes on are us, and we've seen everything else progressing. The state now has great leadership in Tish James and Andrew Stewart Cousins leading our Senate majority, right? We're seeing that. We're not seeing that at the city. And I think that matters because, again, it's no coincidence. I say this last thing. When the commissioner of the police and the mayor are sitting at a round table and talking about the drop in crime, which is great. We are the safest big city. All right. But there's been an increase in the reporting of rapes. Why wasn't that mentioned? Why wasn't that mentioned? That is offensive to me as a woman. That's saying that that's not important. Even if you want to say it's because there's increased reporting. Give me a break. Fine, increased reporting. You still should acknowledge it. You still should talk about it and say that we're going to do everything possible to continue to make this city safe for everybody.
That's true.
Right?
I agree with all that.
That is, but those perspectives are missing, and that is what that is important when you're talking about policy. So I am in this because I am passionate about equity and justice. I am passionate about making sure that every single New Yorker is validated and that their voices are heard, and I will continue to lead in that way as public advocate, and I hope that I can get your support. Thank you.
Excellent. Good job. Last two, Ben Yee, closing statements, bro.
Closing X is good. I want to answer your original question, though, about the nagging and what have you. But the first thing I say is I do want to adjust the identity politics thing. Everybody should see themselves in government, which is why I've spent so much time and effort trying to elect hundreds and hundreds of new people to things like the county committee. Now, if you don't know what county committee is, Manhattan and Staten Island are electing their county committees this year. So feel free to go to benjaminyee.com and just send me an email, and I will get you elected to county committee, no problem. As long as you are a registered voter in this city. But to your point about the nagging, I also had a Jewish mother. My father's from Boston, but he's Chinese, I guess, So my dad's Chinese, but he's from Boston. He was born here. But my mother is an immigrant from Poland. Her parents came here after World War II. My mom was born in Poland, a refugee. Her parents were Jews who survived the Holocaust, and they came here looking for a safer and more tolerant place to raise their family. And yeah, my mom nagged the shit out of me. But
good to know, honestly.
She did a lot.
Everybody had good moms here. It's clear. Okay, keep going.
But she did a lot of other things too.
Yeah.
For example, she would always say to me, they stopped teaching civics in the 80s, and that's why you don't know shit. And she would explain to me how politics and the government work. And she cared a lot because obviously her family had come through a tremendous tragedy, basically because people didn't understand how to govern a society. And so when they came here, they got involved in American politics. My mother had a lot of ideas about how America was doing everything wrong. And I remember saying to her at one point, if you hate this country so much, why don't you go somewhere else? We could go anywhere. And she said, I love this country. The fact that I can say these things is why I love it. And that's why you have to love it too. And that's why you should be involved. So beyond nagging, the public advocate isn't the Jewish mom for New York. I mean, there's a lot of elements of it in there, and we'd be lucky to have a good Jewish mom for all of New York City. And we'd all get matzo ball soup when we're sick, and it'd be brilliant. But the other parts of my life, where my mom said, when I came back from college and she said, are you going to do anything? I was like, I don't know. I'm doing this blog. And she was like, I should have stayed with the blog, honestly. I would be way richer now. But she was like, there's this guy running for president. And I was like, oh yeah, Barack Obama. She was like, why don't you go help out? You care about politics. And I was just like, okay, fine, I will. And you know what? I went to volunteer on the Obama campaign, and I never looked back. I went from the Obama campaign to being involved in local politics. Now, I didn't know or care about local politics at all in 2008. Or really, I guess it was 2007, because it was the primary. And I never thought that I would know or care about local politics at all. In fact, when I started getting engaged in local politics, I was pretty happy about the fact that I couldn't name a single state senator. I was like, see, I'm not all sold out. But now I know who all of them are, because as it turns out, they're very, very important. And we don't have a system of government which systematically engages the public. We have what we call a representative democracy, but we've talked about the idea of the ombudsman or ombudsperson. The ombudsperson is an idea that comes back from the bad old days of monarchy, because you'd have a monarch, and if you complained about the government, they'd kill you. And so you needed somebody to be a liaison, to be a go-between for the people to the government. The idea that we have an ombudsperson in a modern democracy is sort of weird to me, because it's an admission, essentially, that our representative democracy is not representative enough. And I think we can feel this right now. And so, from my perspective, the public advocate goes beyond the idea of an ombudsperson. Every politician is like, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to listen better than the other person who's listening. Well, it might be the case that all politicians actually are listening. but they can't figure out how to turn that listening into concrete action. Or they're constrained by a system which prevents them from doing so.
I mean, this is
It's I don't know what you'd call it, but I'll wrap it up so that Mr. Blake can go in just a second. But what I will end on then is that the public advocate can be more. We can all be more. We can all do more. And the barriers that are set up to prevent us from engaging are things that we need to start removing. And this is why I'm in the race for public advocate. And this is what I've been doing for 10 years. And so I ask only that you give me your consideration. Check out the website, benjaminy.com. Check out the ideas, because at the end of the day, we need to elect people who have good ideas. And I'm not saying they have bad ideas.
Get elected.
And I can help people get elected.
benjaminy.com if you want to get elected and run. Got it? Yas? And Michael Blake, you've been teed up, my friend.
First, thank y'all for being here. Thank you for being engaged. Thank you for wanting to be a part of the process. Thank you for not sitting on the sidelines. And we appreciate you for creating the space for all of us. You know, Dr. King said it best. In the end, we remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. We don't have the luxury in 2019 to be silent. So if you still believe that things have to change for us, that's why we're asking for you to get involved and stay involved. I come to you as someone who's the son of Jamaican immigrants. My mama was homeless in Jamaica, slept on church pews. Came into the States, she raised 4 boys. For 40 years, worked in a manufacturing plant. My daddy was a janitor, 1199 SCIU. Born with a heart murmur in the NICU 3.5 weeks. Had a near fatal car accident in 2001. Fell asleep at the wheel. If it was not for the hands of God and luggage in the car, I go over the cliff that day. Wrote out something to myself. Dear God, may today be my greatest day. Greater than the great day I had a day before. But my goal has not been met unless tomorrow is the greatest of them all. That's why we do this work. To help people. To represent you, to fight for you, and step up for you. And that's what we've been doing. When we talk about the work, I come to you as someone who in 2006 was trained by then Senator Obama to get involved in campaigns and then went to Iowa. I'm the validation. Black people go to Iowa. It does happen. I know sometimes I get surprised right there. But it's that momentum of how we change the game and continue to demonstrate what could be possible. My family has a motto right now, from No House in Jamaica to the Black House in Northwestern to the White House in D.C. to the State House in Albany. But we come here to continue to remind people that we have to have a bigger vision. We have to think about things differently. Maybe we should focus on building schools, not jails. Maybe we should focus on helping someone get a book bag rather than arresting people for a dime bag. Maybe we should help people understand what's going on with a stem cell rather than putting them in a jail cell. That's the kind of vision we have when we talk about for the people. And we're coming here right now because we want you engaged. For all the young leaders in the room, we've been talking about civic engagement. You can learn what we've been doing at New Leaders Council, where we've trained 7,000 millennials across the country, or Generation Citizen, which is changing the game in New York City as well. But this is a moment for us to be involved. So if you still believe that we can have a city that represents and works for us, if you still believe that we're going to not allow the nonsense in D.C. to represent who we are, if you still believe that it's unacceptable for a racist travel ban to be described for the Muslim community, if you still believe it is unacceptable to be trying to build a wall to disrupt our Latino community, if you still believe that it's wrong that black and brown people are getting shot and killed and nothing's happening right now, if you still believe that it's unacceptable for anti-Semitic language at the same time that our peoples, all communities are being disrespected, that's why we're asking you to join us. Join us in the vision, what we're trying to bring. Join us in how we help change the game with you. So I come to you again. My name is Michael Blake. We're running for jobs and justice for the people. If you believe in what we're talking about, join us on our website, blakefornyc.com. Follow us on Twitter, Mr. Mike Blake. I got to get my Twitter hashtag game going. Hashtag jobs and justice, hashtag for the people. But we bring this home by saying this. I'm not supposed to be here, literally and figuratively. I'm supposed to die twice. I don't take any day for granted. And we are doing this because we want to help more people. We believe in you the same way you believe in us. But what we're seeing in D.C., what we're seeing in our city, what we're seeing in our state is not acceptable. This is the vision we have. If you still believe you want to rise again, I'm asking for your vote February 26th for Michael Blake for public advocate.
Damn it, that was good.
That was really good.
He got the last word to kill it.
That's right. That's okay. No, you did a good job, too.
JumaneWilliams.com.
So listen, Michael Blake, Jumaane Williams, Melissa Mark-Viverito, Ben Yee. We're going to post it. I'm going to post it on my personal Instagram, Generator. February 26th. Vote! You can meet them now. They're going to hang out and you can meet.
Everybody
Thanks,
say
everybody.
yeah.
We got a switch selfie. Yeah.